Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brandy Duffield, and I'm the Specialist of Partnerships and Community Development here at the Accelerator Center. First of all, I just wanted to give a big thank you to our sponsor, JLL, for making the event possible today. Today, we're joined by a panel of experts who will be discussing all things related to the future of work and the hybrid workplace. They'll be joined by none other than our CEO, Jay Krishnan, who will be moderating the discussion. If you have any questions throughout the event, please feel free to post them in the chat function. Now I'd like to quickly bring up each of our panelists to the virtual stage to introduce themselves, starting with Chris.
Hey everyone, and thanks for having me today. My name is Chris Kotzev, and I am a commercial real estate broker with JLL, or Jones Lang LaSalle. JLL is a global company with offices in almost every major market across the world. Just for a bit of background, I've been working in the commercial real estate field for about 15 years now and have worked in the Waterloo region for my entire career. Office space, office buildings, anything to do with office has really been my specialty for pretty well my entire time in real estate. So again, thanks for having me and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Chris. Maya, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Brandy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Chandrasekharan. I'm joining you from India. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Green Artha, a climate investment and innovation firm. So I support green, climate, and environmental technologies. In addition to that, I've been an entrepreneur. I've invested in social enterprises, and I'm also a network builder. Really excited to join this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Maya. And last but not least, Jesse, over to you. Jesse, you're muted, my friend.
Apologize. Happens all the time. My name is Jesse. I'm with Lakes Environmental Software, and we produce products to protect the environment, and it's the scientific side of the environment. And also chairman of the board of Toria, which is the only truly secure video conference solution. I am a professor at the University of Waterloo. We're located here right at Columbia Street across from the university. And the office was done like this, such that we have a better interaction with the university. And I am excited about the opportunity to talk to you about our experience on returning back to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse. And last but not least, I'm going to pass the reins over to our CEO, Jay Krishnan.
Thank you, Brandy. Really excited to be here and get diverse opinions from the folks on this panel. My name is Jay Krishnan. I intend to moderate this panel. We will find out if I'm successful or not. I've been with the Accelerator Center for the last 6 months. So looking forward. All right, then, we are in business. I guess it takes the first 6 seconds to figure out how to utilize this platform. Every single day, you're inducted into a brand new platform, which is a great segue into what the future of work potentially looks like. Maya, Jesse, Chris, thank you for being with us. And to the audience, welcome. Thanks for allocating time in your otherwise potentially busy schedules to be with us. I strongly recommend not to wait till the end of the panel to pose your questions. There exists an opportunity for you to put those questions down in the comment section, and we will try to address them to the fullest degree possible. The goal behind this panel is to garner insights from the leaders that you see on your screen, but I think more importantly, to get a diverse set of opinions and responses to the questions that I feel like most of us don't have answers to. The future is reasonably uncertain, but at the same time, it is exciting. I think what we've seen over the pandemic and the lockdown is that the future of work at least personally, the way I saw it, was a bunch of general specialists allocating a few hours a day into what they love to do, and sort of doing that through a transformative process, through digital platforms, the ability to reach different parts of the world, as opposed to the old-fashioned way of the classical 9 to 5 in a specific office. So to me, I think that's what's exciting. I'd love to hear your individual thoughts, depending on where you come from, your backgrounds, etc., as to what does the future of work behold, your professional career over the next 2-3 years. And if you can touch upon the interim, which I'm guessing is hybrid, what does that mean? What does the hybrid workplace mean to you? So we'll kick it off with Maya and then go around the room, which in my case is Maya, followed by Chris, followed by Jesse.
Thanks, Jay. So like you, I think the future work is going to be both very interesting and has a ton of new opportunities. My work is around investing and entrepreneurship, which has always been very much more open to new models. But especially now with this ability to work remotely and to work on multiple platforms, I think I do see this incredible opportunity for people with talent and skill and capability to add value and to build and create wherever they are in the world. But, and this is the big but, I think all of this really depends on how people are going to be able to collaborate. I don't think any of this comes together, including investing, without human interface, without the ability to really assess people, to understand contexts, to understand backgrounds, to understand energies. So in my mind, I don't see it being a binary, one or the other. I think that there has to be a hybrid. But I don't think we know what that hybrid is yet. I think we're still playing around with different models. And I think the people who will really win through this are the ones who have the ability to be flexible. I don't know that anyone has a clear answer.
Yep, makes sense, Maya. Chris, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so if there's something I've learned in the course of my career, it's that there's no one perfect way for people to work. Just because we have desks in an office, it doesn't mean that it's the right sort of approach for every task that you do in a day. Even before the pandemic, you need places to congregate, however, have meetings, do heads down work. It's all different. And I think that the pandemic has really accelerated employers' understanding that there really isn't a one size fits all model. But like one thing's for sure, there's still a need for physical space. Maya touched on it. And I think there's still a lot that still needs to unfold, but there needs to be a place where people can come together. I really dislike the work from home headlines because we should really be calling it work from anywhere. Sometimes it's going to be in an office. Other times it might be in a coffee shop. For me, I do some of my best work, honestly, in the car, talking on the phone. You can be as loud as you want, and I'm kind of animated when I talk, so my hands are going everywhere, and I'm in my zone, and no one can see that. But work from home implies we'll be doing everything from our houses all the time, and I really don't believe that's what people want, even though you might read some of those headlines. So I agree that there's still a lot to sort of play out over the next little bit, and it's gonna take some time for us to truly understand what that looks like. And like I said before, there's no one size fits all. So it's going to be different for every company and organization. But I back to my point of I do believe there's going to be a place for the office, and sometimes there may be people with certain roles that are there more than others, but there needs to be that place where you can collectively get together and brainstorm, quite honestly, socialize, build rapport. That's part of culture. So that's my 2 cents.
No, thanks, Chris. Mental note is to try and figure out when do I carpool with you next.
Yeah, never. No, nobody wants to carpool with me because it's usually me talking on the phone the whole time.
No, thanks, Chris. Jesse, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. This work from home, I also agree. I am the chairman of the board of Toria, and Toria, the CEO, for example, got fed up with the lockdowns. So he did lockdowns in Mexico. He did lockdowns in the United States. He did lockdowns in all over the world. So he was in Turkey for a while, and now he's in Serbia. So the vice president is also doing the same thing. So people are still working and developing and implementing good solutions. On the lake side, I can tell you that people were asking me to return to work. So we had to account for when to return to work, take into consideration the school situation. People had children and they wanted to return when the children had school. So we set up for September. It was a common agreement. People were begging to come back because it gets to a point you need the social interaction. And people were exhausted with the teleconferencing, and they wanted to see each other. And the chit chat is something that we all don't do it in teleconferencing. They wanted that as well. It's a social grease for us to interact with each other. So the experience that we have here is it will depend on the personality. Some people can stay home and love to do it. Our experience is most don't. So staying at home is very few people can do that and work from home. Going anywhere, it's an easier proposition. And then the remote work in flexible offices is something that will grow. And also the people that cannot move away and they need to be remote at home are the ones that are asking us to return. So in common agreement with our team, we decided how we were going to come back. And we have here most of the people wanted to come back and are very happy to be happy according to what they tell us.
Yep, gotta make sense. There's an interesting point that you touched upon. I mean, if you look at the evolution of the office space, right? The whole traditional post-industrial revolution and the style of offices that existed back then. There's a great line by Groucho Marx, and he says, "No man goes before his time unless the boss leaves early." So I guess that's out of the window now, at least for the interim. But the thing that you touched upon, the social grease, is a fascinating topic. And for the folks listening in, that's the four of us were chatting in the background as to, for all the years that all of us have worked, there exist days when you have back-to-back meetings and you hit this wall of exhaustion. But it sounds like in the Zoom Hangouts hop-in world, the probability of hitting that point of exhaustion is much quicker. Multiple reasons, right, to it. If you folks can touch upon, A, is that a thing? Is that really a thing? And B, how do you overcome it? And are you proactively doing things in your workplace to either avoid it or to mitigate it? So we'll start with you, Jesse, and go backwards.
Yes. People are calling the Zoom exhaustion, and I like because Zoom competes with Toria, so associating Zoom with exhaustion is a good thing. Now, the fact is, when we are on video conferences, people don't see each other's body language, and you can read all about this. It's a traditional topic in communication. More than half of what you gain in a meeting comes from body language. Facial expression, even in the video conferences, people are very robotic. And the brain then has to process much harder to see what is that person is conveying, and you're trying to absorb things that are not there. So it exhausts you to do the video conference. There's not a lot that can be done if you keep the way it is. So it is very much a technology issue that the technology needs to evolve such that we can have all the body language aspects and the relationship. Furthermore, when we have multiple people on a screen, you see they are too tiny for you to get facial expressions, and you just get faces. And when you are in a boardroom, it's completely different. So this is something that we will adjust when it will evolve as well when we use the video conference and when we are doing face-to-face. And that's my 2 cents on this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Chris?
Yeah, I totally agree. The Zoom fatigue, Teams fatigue, whatever you want to call it, is definitely a real thing. I think back to last year when we were, first forced to work at home, when everything was virtual and you were only doing Teams meetings. And there are some people that still are. I'm fortunate to be sitting here in my office right now, fortunate to be out of my house and out doing things again that feel a little bit more like normal life. But yeah, last year, you booked these calls back to back to back all day long with very little break in between. And I think the big difference between, I think Maya, you brought or made mention of this. What is the change? We were always busy. We always had back to back things. It was always, life was running at the speed of 10. And I think the big difference is you have no decompression time when you're fully working remotely. So you book these calls back to back and you're on them more often than not. I can remember we were, on a call and it's like you're 2 minutes late for your next call. So you're running into the next meeting without having the opportunity to even think about what you're going into next. So, having the ability in what we used to do, call it, having the ability to do that or whatever, you are able to pick yourself up, you walk out of a room from a meeting, you get in your car, you go back to your office, wherever you're going to go. There's a bit of decompression time in between your conversations and meetings, which I think is super important. If you're forced to work at home, or if that's kind of the state of where you are right now for lockdowns or whatever reason, one of the things that I used to do is intentionally not make those meetings back to back and try and block, 15 minutes or whatever in between each of those calls. So you do get a break, get up and go outside, even if it's just, pop your head out, go back in. If you have time to go for a walk, whatever, those were all things that, I was doing and it was super helpful. It allowed me to kind of get into a better state of mind for my next call or meeting. So.
Makes sense.
I'll also just add to that. I think that point that you made about decompression is a very important one, Chris, because it's not just decompression between meetings. It's that real decompression between work and life. And I think that in the absence of a work commute, you're literally just going from one to the other. But yeah, apart from that, I think everything about like Zoom fatigue has already been said. To add to some of the things that Chris suggested, I think what we've also come to do is, yes, have these blocks of time in between. So don't block an hour. Also, try to block off like half days, which are just not for meetings. And then the last thing that I think I'm doing, I know a lot more intentionally, is trying to make my Zoom, Teams, whatever, Hangout meeting a little less transactional. So rather than jumping straight into the agenda, starting by actually trying to simulate that conversation that you have when you're with someone in person. How was your weekend? Right now, especially I think in the last year and a half, people have actually become really open about conversations. You literally start a conversation saying, I hope everyone is well. And then people open up. So I feel like there are ways and people are more open now to sharing. So I think it's just about ensuring that you create that little bit of time to start the conversation on relationship building before moving to the agenda.
Yeah, very valid. That's interesting. If you look at the flip side of the coin, right, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, because each of you have different perspectives given the size and scope of what you do. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you do on the other side of the coin to proactively enhance participation / engagement of staff, of stakeholders, of customers, etc. Now let's go with you, Jesse, because you've done multiple hats. that of an academician, that of an entrepreneur. So what do you do in each of these hats of yours to magnify or amplify engagement?
Yes, it's very important that we allocate to people time in the morning. So Atoria and Lake Software. In the morning, we have a stand-up meeting, and everybody has to talk a determined amount of time. So we hear from everybody. And then it goes, if somebody has questions over what's presented, it's just a stand-up. You don't have to prepare PowerPoints. Every morning, we do that on both companies, and we allocate them time, and people engage. We notice when we start implementing this that if you start the day like that, the rest of the day people are engaged. Now, when it was a remote, we did the same thing. Everybody in the calls, they would have 30 seconds to introduce the day, and then we go one by one, and we have a bit of a reserve 2 or 3 minutes initially for chit chat or small talk, and then we go into the day-to-day business, and each one talks about their own activity, what they need, what they are doing, what they expect to accomplish. And the rest of the day, they are more engaged, because when you talk about what you're doing, you basically commit yourself to something, and you see the collaboration from other people on what you're doing. You feel more comfortable going back to people. So it is our formula for engagement.
Got it. Do you want to go next, Maya? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the same situation, given that your potential engagement is at multiple levels, right? Your portfolio companies, investees, potential companies that you want to invest in, your own team, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like we don't have a very large toolkit. It's similar to the stuff that Jesse talked about, and just to set the context, the company that I co-founded was founded in March 2020. So pretty much the entire team and the entire time we have been around, we've been working remotely. And obviously my co-founder and I have known each other for a while before that, but still everyone else in the team, we've been building those relationships online. The daily stand-up, I think, really helps. And, while we have, I would say, a semi-structured format for the daily stand-up, we also try to use a lot more of the time, as Jesse mentioned, for chit-chat. And I'll be honest, we use the same format really even for portfolio companies, because, and Chris talked about this as well, there's this power to building relationships, which only comes through the informal conversation. It doesn't come directly from, a checklist of questions. So, while we don't have obviously a daily stand-up with the portfolio companies or the companies that are in the pipeline, again, I think quite intentionally now, we weren't doing it intentionally before. We used to start off just with the agenda for the call, but intentionally now we're trying to understand, how are people? Where are they now? I mean, it's a really interesting question to ask people these days. So where are you right now? And people are working from all over the world and some really cool places. So it's a great way to start building a relationship.
Sure. Chris, I'm really hoping you give us the home run answer here, given that you're the biggest institutional representation.
My answer, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure, is very similar to the rest of the group. Our team actually does the same thing, except we do our team meeting at the end of the day. So we've got a structured daily 4 p.m. meeting or call. More often than not lately, it's meeting just to do a run through of the projects, the things we need to get done. It started a long time ago. I think originally we actually started it as a check-in, quite frankly, to see how everyone was doing when the pandemic first hit. It was like, okay, we're not together anymore, and our team is truly like a family. Like we spent pre-pandemic, and we try to spend tons of time together now, but pre-pandemic, we were together all the time, like, lunch, whatever, you name it, always together. And I think when everything happened, we were feeling very isolated, and that's how it started. and it created this bond among the team that kind of we were able to help carry forward and carry each other through the situation we were dealing with. But now, like, it's used as to what Maya and Jesse both said, like, here's kind of the round table of what we have to get done. Here's what the day looks like tomorrow. Does anybody need anything for that? It's like I said, more often than not lately, we're a little more in person than we were maybe 6 months ago. But for those that aren't in the office that day or whatever, or they're on the road going to a meeting or coming from a meeting, they have the ability to call in, and it just creates connectivity and engagement amongst the team. And it's also a place, like I was saying before, I can't remember if it was before this started or not, but where you can, banter a little bit, find out about, for our particular business, did anybody hear anything about something happening in the market? Is there a big company looking to move to Waterloo? We all talk to a lot of people, so you pick up information, and that's sort of a forum to share it, I guess. But it's like similar to both Maya and Jesse, like I said, and we just do it at a different time of the day, I guess.
I have a question actually related to that, and I'm wondering if anyone has any data or intuition on this. Is the morning stand-up less or more agenda-based than the evening stand-up? Like, is there a sense that one of those can build more engagement and the other one is about, here are the things that need to be done, or here are the things that got done?
Yes, there are. I do not have it in front of me, but I'll give you an example. Let's say you plan the week Friday afternoon. When people come back from the weekend, they already lost half of what they discussed and committed from the Friday afternoon. So those week planning you do on Monday. The same way, if you are planning the day, it's more productive to do it in the morning because you committed, you still remember that, and then you go for it. And if you do in the afternoon, when you go home, you come back, some of what you're committed, you don't, it's not in front of your mind anymore. So the morning ones are definitely more productive.
We actually do we do a Monday morning team meeting as well, Jesse, for that reason. We do a big project rundown, and it's helpful to get the week going. For us, we find anyways, in our particular line of work, the mornings are a very sort of productive time, I would say, with phone calls, with meetings, showings, building tours, things like that. So for us, and for me personally, I'm better in the morning than I am in the afternoon. I'm more sharp. So we thought anyways, we use that time for, working on what we need to work on, and we come back later to regroup. So I think it's totally dependent on sort of the organization, the people involved. We're a team of 8, so we're not a team of 50, which makes it a little bit tougher. And we kind of know each other on a very personal level, and that's how we arrived with that.
Yeah, it makes sense. In fact, you touched upon something which reminded me of what we do at the AC. So we do have Monday morning staff meetings which specifically address tasks that every team member is going to work on for that week. And then we prioritize it based off of, am I going to do this week and therefore it's a Q1, urgent and important? Or am I going to address it in the weeks following and therefore it's Q2? And on the Fridays, we look back at what we put out there on Monday to see if we accomplish those. And the goal is to seek assistance on Monday from the various folks. It also brings a sense of everybody's aware to a large degree what everybody else is doing. But to go back to the question, the other thing that, and credit where it's due, the team's doing all the work like a good CEO. I just show up and speak about it. The other thing the team has done a very good job of is we have a social committee. And it's amazing the kinds of things we do on mostly on Fridays. One of the ones we did was a mystery room. It's virtual. Everybody's in the mystery room. We are paired up as couples, and you go in and search for a bunch of things. And along the lines, you have a fair amount of decentralized learning. So the last one was about Canada and everything that riles up patriotism over the years. And as you discover the clues, you get to the end where you have a reward. The other one that's continuous is a music league. And it's very thematic. So you pick up, every week the theme changes. And based on voting, you have a winner, and the winner has bragging rights. But little things that foster engagement, I guess. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Let's start with you, Chris. From everything that we could scrounge on what's available publicly, in order to activate, connectivity with the stakeholders, supporting the community around, and collaboration with staff, you guys JLL has defined very articulately the ability to go hybrid through return, redesign, and refinement. And as you read through it, a lot of it is intuitive, a lot of it makes sense. It ends up connecting the dots till, the lead off into refinement, which gives it a fair amount of flexibility for the office to do what it wants to do. And I guess, I'm guessing that it comes from your institutional knowledge of running space and real estate and your understanding of what is best for the customer. So if you can walk us through those three phases, I think it'll be very helpful for not just us, but the audience. And then we'll go to Maya and Jesse as well.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, we've spent the last 10 years sort of getting very dense in offices. Right now, we're in a situation where we need to spread out and socially distance, but it's a tough question to answer because everybody is going to have a different approach to it. We're working with some companies where, they had a very dense cubicle system and they've sort of recognized that their office space is only going to be used for meetings. So we need to create a space that's got a large boardroom, some smaller meeting rooms for people that want to come in, but it's not really designed for the day-to-day. So it's, like I said, Jay, it's a very difficult question to answer. There's no right answer, and we're learning as we go. Everybody's going to have a different solution to this, but I think my opinion is right now, all those things that are sort of noted in there about safety protocols and things like that. One of the biggest themes or things that I can make mention of is probably around patience. So patience for staff, patience for leadership, everybody is learning as we go. And I think that's probably going to be probably the biggest theme as we kind of come out of this and learn what in fact everybody wants and what everybody truly wants and is going to need on the go forward. But, and Maya will probably touch a little bit more on this stuff, but big focus around health and wellness in the office. I think, everybody working at home, and we've talked a lot about it already on this call, with people being, just exhausted with being in front of the computer screen all the time. I think from a lot of what we're hearing, it's how do we make our space better, more engaging for around the health and wellness piece. What is that going to look like? And again, that's something we are kind of learning as we go.
Yeah, I think that was great. I think patience is a great theme. I'm actually going to add two more that I think are interesting themes, which are flexibility. And Chris talked about this as well, which is that there's no one size fits all. And until now, we've had this very clear definition of this is what an office means, this is what going to work, or this is what working means. And that just doesn't hold anymore. There's an entire group of people now who just are not going to align with that even when offices are fully open. So having the adaptability and the flexibility to meet various people where they are and understand their needs. And that really, I think, comes from the third theme, which is, I think there's going to be a lot more need for leadership with empathy, which again, Chris touched upon, which is this understanding of what different contexts and different situations are for people, and factoring that into your office design and your company culture. So again, I think the days of here is the structure and everyone aligns with it and it's a 9 to 5 are gone.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, you sound like you're in violent agreement.
Yes. Luckily, we had two things going for us during this world plague, which is we had flexibility here already, and we had people that would work remotely. So when the time came that we had to work remotely, it was difficult, but not too difficult. because we consider here based on productivity, what you produce, not in number of hours you're sitting on a chair. So people, we feel that people are more engaged. They recognize that management is not breathing down their neck all the time. When they have problems, they have to leave at 3. They need some other time. They want to arrive a little later and leave a little later or earlier, and so on and so forth. We had all these adjustments, and it does improve engagement. It's the team feeling as part of the team is much higher. We had here also every month, and we are returning slowly to this. Every month, one Friday afternoon, we would be off. The club that we created with the staff would have engagements that we would go bowling one time, or mini golfing another time, canoeing, etc. So we would not have concern about that half day we would lose on a Friday afternoon once a month. We also have inside the office lunches every Friday. So it is this type of thing that helps bring together everybody, and people appreciate that. So I'm glad that one of the lessons is that people are learning that just paying for people to sit on a chair 8 hours a day is not the final solution.
Yep.
I just want to add one thing to that as well. Like, let's also not forget that, I'm not going to say work from home because I don't like it. Let's not forget that work from anywhere is not a new philosophy. This was something that companies were doing before. And I understand, there's probably a big tech community on this call listening right now, and like some of the bigger tech companies are pioneers of this kind of workplace, right? So there are companies that were really putting this stuff into place already. I won't use big company names or whatever, but there's a couple in town that are not even from the tech sector that, are going to, or went to long before, the pandemic started, to a hybrid work model where you would work at home or work from anywhere a couple times a week. You would, reserve a desk and you would go into the office for the balance. Again, I go back to, everybody's going to have a different way of doing this, but it existed before. So this isn't something that's completely new.
True, that's true. In fact, as you folks,
it isn't something that's completely new, but I think for the first time it's become something that is so mainstream and so acceptable that I think that's what is really kind of revolutionary about this. Because before this, and I know what you're saying, Chris, I know of an FMCG company, again, like a multinational FMCG company that 20 years ago in India had this kind of revolving desk situation. But I think the other thing is, and Jesse, you touched upon this, which is that there is also now this enormous need for companies to realize that it's not about number of hours, it's about your actual productivity and how you enable people to be productive, and how you are also enabling yourself as a manager to sort of account for deliverables is, I think, now key. And that makes it trickier for managers. It used to be very simple. You just say that this one is in their desk and therefore I know they're doing a good job. Now you have to be much smarter about how you break deliverables up.
And to your point, Maya, you're absolutely correct. It is maybe I was too broad in what I said before, but it is, to a degree revolutionary, because there were companies before, even though some were shifting to that model, there were some very traditional, more conventional, where you had to be in your seat for 8 hours a day. And to your point, that's how I knew you were doing good work. So it is forcing a conversation. And for those that weren't, providing that flexibility or that level of autonomy, let's say, they're now having to learn very quickly because they didn't have that in place. So you're right. That's a very, very good point.
Yep, true. And for those of you who missed the last 2 minutes, the summary of what you folks have mentioned, and I'm just reading it out. patience, flexibility, adaptability, and Friday evening social engagement. All of them sound like exactly what my wife's been harping on for the last many years. Jokes aside, it's a great segue into the next question. If you, given the situation that all of us have faced in our organizations correspondingly, the biggest struggle has been not just the hybrid model, but the shakeout of it, right? And specifically on culture. And I'll read out some data that I'd gone through, and that leading up to what Jesse had mentioned earlier, which is how do you get parity of opinions through diversity, and specifically with gender? So let me read this data out, and I'd love to get your thoughts. So since March 2020, three specific research groups, the Boston Consulting Group surveyed over 3,000 people in the US and in Europe, and found out that working women, correspondingly within a particular age group, which I won't get into, spend an average of 15 hours a week more on domestic work back at home. A second group was conducted by the University of Melbourne in Australia, a result of a survey that spanned over 1,800 people, realized that women, as long as they're parents, put in an extra 3 hours a day taking care of home as well as supervision. And women who are not parents took an hour less. So all the data aside, if you look at the hybrid model of either a 2-1-2 or a 3-2 model, it's beginning to look like there is a fair amount of group dynamics with an in-group and an out-of-group team, a hybrid team. So in other words, if you have a mixed model, which is I think what all of us are alluding to, it can create an entrenched divide between those in the office and those at home. And there are numerous studies that talk about the gender gap getting magnified in a situation like this, with or without the pandemic. I guess there's a point to be made that over years, women disproportionately end up taking far more responsibilities. And there's lots of evidence to show that these kinds of dynamics will create, by that I mean in group, out of group, will create more conflict. So what do you do as an organization to ensure that if you do have a hybrid model, there exists a day or periods of the day when everybody's in or when everybody's online? Or do you even do it? Let's start with you, Maya.
Okay, sure. I mean, I think the first thing that I want to start off by saying is that the pandemic definitely exacerbated and heightened existing cultural divides and gender divides. So the one thing that I want to call out is that the hybrid model, the flexible model, is not going to create more or less parity. It's everything outside of that is already existing and that is already social and cultural. But if we are looking at how to mitigate for some of these sort of unintended consequences of providing more flexibility, but then being worried about not having the diversity of opinion and perspective, then I think the suggestion that you had, Jay, is probably the one that you want to go with, which is that you figure out when is the most convenient time for everyone, or at least for different of representatives of all kinds, to be together. And this is, again, not just a gender thing, but it's about having all different types of groups, making sure that different parts of the organization are not working in silos, but finding a way for them all to come together and overlap for extensive periods of time where there's this combination of both agenda and no agenda. Because I think the lack of agenda is also what helps create some of those relationships and that kind of that synchronicity and alignment.
Yeah, got it. Good point. Chris, let's go with you. You're also in a position where your team is small, but your organization is large, right? So I guess, do you have the flexibility to drive decisions both ways, or are you empowered with decisions that come from mothership?
Yeah, I mean, we like JLL is a global publicly traded company, so it's there is a mothership, so to speak, and there's a lot of connectivity to that. We have autonomy to kind of operate within the realm of the JLL guidelines and things that the organization has set out. So it's a bit of both, quite honestly, but. To the question specifically, I agree very much with Maya. I think that this is a bigger issue. It's a bigger conversation. But I think where this ties into the workplace is around diversity in the workplace, and that doesn't only mean gender or what have you. It's around positions within the company. So if you're going to have a hybrid model, you need to have a mixture of people in the office at any given time. You can't just say, okay, sales team, your day is Monday, finance and admin, your Tuesday. Then you create that silo effect. It's better, and I've done some reading on this as well and studies on this. It's to have sort of a mixture of people in the office at any given time. So I don't know that I have much more to add than kind of what, and we were talking a little bit about that before the call, actually. I agree with Maya's point. I think there needs to, and I don't know, because you can't necessarily force people to come into work right now, but could it be part of a company's work from home or work from anywhere policy where you're required to be in the office a couple of days a week, and that requires from a managerial level, some scheduling around, okay, we're going to have these people in here from marketing and these people in here from here. And then you've got a mixture of people from across the organization, which of course brings diversity of opinions into a conversation or a project or a task or whatever. And even honestly, the water cooler talk, right? It's a mixed bag of opinions and views and things to share. So I don't know if I answered the question, Jay. I rambled a lot there.
No, I think you did. I think you brought
Which
up
I tend to do.
No, not at all, Chris. I think you brought up a couple of fairly interesting points. And some of the questions that are popping up, which I'll get to in a second, do highlight the point that you mentioned, which is if you're in an organization where there is an existing culture, and given that the hybrid model is new to all, where do you look for direction? And you did touch upon an interesting topic, which I'll come back to, but let's get Jess's opinion before we move to the next question.
Yeah, everybody addressed the point with diversity of opinion. And I want to give an example, because if it is just this abstract concept, diverse of opinion, people don't really grasp how important it is. So let me give you an example. We are here technology companies, so let me give you an example in science. Newton, the famous Newton, developed calculus. And Leibniz, in the UK, we know that, Isaac Newton, the gravity, F equals ma, etc. And he developed calculus, so it was revolutionary. At the same time, Gottfried Leibniz in Germany developed calculus. If we don't have diversity of opinion, what happens? Well, the UK, the Great Britain, advanced in technology everywhere, but mathematics. They were held back because everybody in the UK wanted to use the way that Newton developed calculus. The rest of Europe decided to engage and see which one was better. So diverse of opinion. And they saw that Leibniz was better. So the French and the Germans from 1750 to 1850 were way ahead of the British. They were left behind 100 years. So this happened in technology. If we ignore other people's opinion and we don't get the other people's opinion, we will be left behind. And this is a warning, because we are living now in a polarized society. This polarization that exists in the United States politically became a discussion that went down as an exchange of insults. So we need not to allow this to get into business or to get in Canada at all, because as we get somebody's opinion and it's not what you like, listen, because diverse of opinion, we say, let's bring people diverse opinions. Now we don't want to listen to them. This is inconsistent. So we must work out in our brains that we must hear things we do not like from people that we do not appreciate, and see how they got to the ideas that maybe it will inspire us to have a better concept or better innovation than we had before. So let's avoid the polarization that really focus on diversity. And the diversity that we're discussing everywhere is such that we have more opinions, and then we have more innovation. And we are then going back and closing it because I don't like it. I'll use my ideology to guide me. That's the wrong thing to do.
Well, I love that. That's a terrific insight and a great example, by the way, Jesse. One of the things that's becoming obvious, without the pandemic, is the ingredients that lead to the dissolution of social inhibitions and leading up to the development of conflict is much easier when your anonymity is maintained, right? So when you have a face-to-face conversation with an individual, it's much more easy to resolve conflict, which often comes up in the workplace. But if you are behind a screen, the shared social identity that you have behind the screen just makes it much more easy to have conflict of some nature and therefore polarization between distributed teams or distributed individuals. It's a great point, which brings me up to two questions. And conveniently, tech plays a role here. Without naming the organization, one of the big tech firms has taken a very firm approach in mandating 2 specific days in the office for staff to come in. I think reasonable to say that sounds awful, and so does the person who posed the question has indicated. So is there a way to want these folks to be in the office without mandating it? Do you guys have, I guess, a personal opinion on this?
I think it's going to take some time to sort of see how this plays out. And, I'm not suggesting mandating anything or whatever, but I think over time, what you may see as people do go back to an office for whatever organization you might work at, there's going to be a mix of both. So it's going to be people that want to go back desperately, people that want to go back sometimes, and people that want to go back never. Mm-hmm. And I think what you may see, this is just my personal opinion, so there's no research to show this, but as time goes on here, and let's say the pandemic's behind us to some extent, or calm down as much as it's going to, and people are back to work, or there's people back to work every day in an office for a particular company, and there's things that are available to that employee. They've got lunch, they've got this, they've got that, and they're around their managers, and they're around their coworkers. And maybe this isn't right, or maybe it won't happen, but I could very much see, and this is more so coming from myself, like when I'm not at the office and I'm working at home or wherever, and the rest of my colleagues are at the office, I think you're going to have a little bit of that, man, I wish I was there. Like, it looks like they're working together collaboratively, they're having fun while they're doing it. I could see that's not anybody forcing anybody to go back to work, but over time, that individual who might be working, removed from their colleagues may say, you know what, I feel like I'm missing out on something here. I'm not getting everything. I want to go back at least some of the time to be around people. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. Maya, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, again, the word mandate is what is putting everyone off. I think it's more around having some sort of guiding principles. And then also because it's so early, and Chris talked about this as well, right? We just don't know how things are going to evolve, but there will be rhythms that settle. As we get, I hope, some more certainty about what the world is going to look like and, how things are going to stabilize, people in general are creatures of habit. And so there will be rhythms that start to get created. And I think organizations can then, the only change that I'm maybe suggesting, which again is a personal opinion, the change that I'm suggesting is rather than the individuals aligning with the organizational rhythm, the organization pays more attention to the individual's rhythms and then aligns with that and says that, okay, it looks like after monitoring this for 3 months in semi-stable conditions, this is what the teams are looking like and how people are coalescing or coming together. So maybe these are our opportunities to have these collaborative conversations or initiatives.
Got it. Yeah, that's fascinating. It's a great just shifting the goalpost, but makes a big difference. Yeah, I love it. Jesse.
One of the things that business do well is follow best practices. And now we don't have them. And there'll be a lot of mistakes. So this is the mistakes on the example given now is a mistake. Mm-hmm. So what is the best thing to do? We need to search for other people's mistakes and targets that were hit and try to get the best practices out of it. Because if you try to develop independent out of other experiences, it'll be very expensive for everybody. So there gotta be one big way for us to identify what are the best practices for these things that in this hybrid world that we're going to live in, and see, is it a better approach in this situation to do? If I try myself, I know it's going to cost me a lot of money. So optimal for everybody, share their experiences. And a platform like this, maybe the Accelerator Center could have one of these meetings explicitly to share more of these best practices. And then we will get more good hits than off hits.
Yeah, that's a fabulous takeaway. And this is my 3-second sales pitch. There's a great white paper being championed by JLL, and AC is putting it out. That does indeed talk about best practices. So keep your ears peeled. With 60 seconds left, one of the other questions that was posed was, being an introvert myself and having had a lot of introverted employees, does anything change? Are the exact instruments that you folks mentioned continue to be experimented with by the organization so that the folks who don't want to necessarily come in continue to get actively engaged? Do you feel that there's something new that needs to be done, or you want to stick with your answers that you gave to the last question?
The introvert, and then if you don't sound like an introvert, Jay. Sorry to disagree.
This was a question on the chat, Jesse.
The introvert perform better than other people on remote conversation. Mm-hmm. We've identified that they are more animated. Maybe that's one of the reasons there are a lot of introverts are in their basement playing games with other people. They would never interact in real world, but they interact really well. So they don't not feel whatever it is felt by the introvert when it's a remote video conferencing. So the introvert requires, like, every person is a distinct individual, and we can address how to position and optimize the output from that individual. Force an introvert to make speeches is not the best use in front of an audience, is not the best use of an introvert. Mm-hmm. So that's just an example of what not to do. So the introvert and other individuals in the company can be customized better in a hybrid world than the previous world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a brilliant way to look at it. Thank you. Maya, Chris, you guys want to add something to that?
I don't have too much to add to that other than, I don't know, there's a bit of a flip side. Like I myself, quite honestly, am quite introverted, and I prefer to be in person. I don't know. So I think it's just, I do agree with some of the points though, Jesse, for sure. For sure.
Chris,
It does
you may have what is known as stage fright, but you're not an introvert.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. Maya?
I think really nothing more to add to what Jesse was saying, except that I think there's an opportunity here. We've taken the use case of an introvert, but I think there's an opportunity here to customize for different types of capabilities and different types of personalities and enable everyone to really be productive.
Got it. To tie things up towards the end, in one word or a sentence, do you folks envision hybrid as a stopgap interim, or hybrid is the way to go, the future?
Well, once you taste it, you don't want to go back. And so it will be the way of the future, but it will not be 100% remote, and it will not be 100% the way it was before. And there will be, as I described before, there will be ways to extract more creativity and more output from everybody in this hybrid world than we had before.
That's it.
I agree, and I think Jesse said something. It's not what it was before, and it's not going to be everybody working at home forever. It's going to be somewhere in the middle, which is a lot of what we're talking about today in the hybrid approach, but it's a bit to be determined. Things don't change overnight, and it's taken us 18 months to even get where we are. So it's going to take some more time to really flush that out. And, we could find in 5 years' time that people are back into offices more than we ever thought they would be. But I think that I said it before too, the hybrid model and the theory behind it is not new. We've been doing it for a while. Companies have began to put it in place pre-pandemic. And I think, the pandemic has forced and accelerated that trend, and it is going to continue. My gut feeling is that we're going to land somewhere in the middle, just like Jesse said. It's going to be, the office will very much have a place. It's going to, you still need it for collaboration, the socializing elements of your job, but it's still going to be a requirement of everything we do. Working at home or, in your basement, as Jesse put it before, is not the way to do things forever and ever. And I think people are already frustrated with only, if you're not going into the office at all. I think there's people frustrated with that. I'd love to get out of my house. I can't wait to go do things. And so, yeah, I think hybrid will be the way we see things moving forward.
Agree. Maya?
Yeah, so I don't really have a lot more to add to that. I think everyone agrees that hybrid is the way. And again, as Chris said, hybrid is not new. I think what's new is this opportunity, which I hope we build on, for choice and customization.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well. I think the fact that the human race has come this far ought to look at this challenge as a tremendous opportunity to pivot from where we were, what we used to do, and look at the workplace with the lens of, for unleashing productivity. When you work based off of your flexibility is what's best for you and the organization, as opposed to where you work, right? Yeah, I agree with all of you. So lastly, I want to end on a great note by Charles Lamb, who said, "I always arrive late at the office, but I make up for that by leaving early." It sounds like a great thing to do these days, given that there is no office. You can continue to be productive wherever you are. So on that note, thank you so much, folks. Thanks, Maya, for your time. Chris, for your insights. Jesse, for all the valuable advice. Thanks, panelists. Thanks, audience. If you have questions, feel free to shoot it to us. We'll be happy to address them offline.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It
Well,
was
thanks a lot
fun.
again. Stay safe.
Thank you,
stay healthy,
everyone.
and we will catch up soon.